Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Big Blue Banter podcast. Obviously, it's a little bit more of an exciting week for me, Nick, everyone involved in following along the New York Giants during the 2018 regular season after they got their season on track with a much-needed win in Houston over the Texans. Very desperate game, and let's be honest, the offense played some incredible football for the first half of the game. We'll talk about why things bogged down in the second half. We're going to talk about a lot of things on this podcast. There is a ton to unpack. But before we do that, I'm going to throw it over to Nick. How are you doing today on this Wednesday afternoon, Nick?
Doing really well. Psych, we're doing it a day early. A lot of jam-packed Giants football in the last 36 hours or so. And so it's been good to finally talk about it. I feel like I prepped for it for a long enough time here. So ready to go.
Yeah. No doubt about that. And let's say this right now. We expected the all-22 game tape to be released kind of closer to Wednesday or Wednesday evening, but it looks like the NFL has decided to kind of up that this year to up their product a bit, and they're dropping it Tuesday now. Actually, I saw it come lot. I was watching the broadcast version of the game for something on Monday night, like really late at like 1 a.m., and I clicked at the top right corner and saw the coach's film was there, so I got a head start on that this week. I think they actually put it up like right away on Tuesday morning, Monday evening, Tuesday morning, right between that time. So we got a good head start on that this week. I've rewatched this game now twice on the All-22 just because I was doing a couple different things for 24/7 Sports that you guys can check out there. I broke down all the third down plays, and I looked into some of the potential low hits that we may debate later on the show from the Texans if they were, cheap shots or not. But we're going to start this bad boy off the way we've started off the last two podcasts because it's a very heated topic and it will remain one, I've learned, after what happened this week, and still some doubters. And that's Eli Manning. And we're going to start with a breakdown of his performance. So Manning went 25 of 29, had 4 passes that weren't completed out of 29 attempts. One was a deep ball to Cody Latimer that he just overshot. The other ones, one was a ball he threw a little bit early, I guess, to Odell Beckham, but in reality, it was really just J.J. Watt. This is a third down I'll go over, but it was really just a good pressure by J.J. Watt. And then a couple others that I'm blanking on at this time. Do you remember the other two by any chance, Nick, just watching it so much?
Not offhand.
No worries. The point is 25 of 29, 297 yards passing, a 10.2 yards per attempt average, which to me is a really important indicator of quarterback success. It's one of the reasons I've been so down on Derek Carr for the past 2 or 3 seasons, I guess, whenever the hype started there. And that was a yards per attempt average that has only happened in seven times so far through the first, 48 games of the season with, 96, I guess it's 96 quarterbacks going off. So that to me was extremely impressive. I'm going to get into my evaluation of his play after this, but first I want to throw it to Nick. Nick, what did you think after watching the tape about Eli Manning?
I think he definitely hit some of the points that I and a few others had kind of criticized him on the previous week, specifically with his ability to diagnose the defense after the snap. That was just spot on in cases like where he's seeing cover 2 and he's looking to hit the turkey hole, which is the spot between the safety and the corner towards the sideline. And he's aggressively looking to make that throw. I think it really elevated overall his play speed, where he was only late. I mean, not even handful, like a couple of times maybe. And so his placement, which is usually very good, was really good this game. And just an interesting performance, because in the wake of he's a 37-year-old real professional. In the wake of a subpar performance, in my opinion, he comes right back with a very strong performance against a defense that, again, the pockets were not clean. It was not a very straightforward game. It was a tough battle, and he really played well, and he delivered it on key times, especially in that fourth quarter drive. That was huge to come back from that, where, in the third quarter, fourth quarter, they faltered a bit. And, for reasons I just think of just the defense being competitive. But overall, much, much different and much more decisive and ready to see it and send it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I saw the same thing. To me, the fact that there was still some nitpicking of Eli Manning's game on Giants Twitter, and I know probably most of the people who are responsible for that aren't listening to this podcast, but it's still going on, just proves to me one thing, that no matter what he does this season, people are going to come after him. Obviously, there was the 2nd and 9 play, which was in the Giants' first touchdown drive. Really an incredible play call by Pat Shurmur. Nick actually went over this this was the play right after the Giants ran in from 12 personnel right into the boundary, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah, the very following play, actually, Baldy had it in his Baldy breakdowns. And do you want me to go into that now, or should we?
Just give a quick wrap up because I just want to go ahead and make my point real quick on Eli there.
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. So for what it really was is Baldy kind of points out that the safety was nosy there, and what he kind of missed was that Shermer and coaches like to run things, and when we see running plays that kind of don't go anywhere, they look like kind of like a failure to a lot of fans and to me at first. But then I noticed again when he comes right back with the same play in the opening script, this 2nd and 9 that we're talking about, where he runs play action boot, and it's basically a sail concept where Sterling Shepard is coming across the field into a vacated area where no one really is. And what Baldy and a lot of the guys in the breakdown didn't point out is because the Giants had the bona fide threat to run, and because they were running overloaded tight ends to one side into the boundary, meaning very close to the field on the short side of the field, that boundary safety became part of the run fit. And Pat Shermer knows this. It's kind of basic football, but that's what opened up the vacated hole for the throw. It's just very, very kind of savvy things that it all of a sudden made me realize the frequency at which you see this. He's watching and seeing what the defense does to everything.
Yeah, and that's just an example of a very, very good play call by Pat Shermer because, like you said, he's doing what we talked about on the previous podcast. We see from a lot of offensive play callers around the NFL, setting up a big play with a play before it. But the point I wanted to make on that is that after that play, as Eli Manning's rolling to his right on a bootleg play action pass, he makes a throw to Sterling Shepard, and you hear people saying, this was a bad play. He should have threw the ball to Odell Beckham Jr. It would have been a touchdown. Yes, Odell Beckham Jr. is streaking up the right sideline. That would have been a touchdown if he can accurately throw that ball. But how many quarterbacks do these people – I find it so unbelievable they think that quarterbacks on the run, on the rollout, can flick a ball in stride about 35 yards down the field and hit Odell Beckham Jr. I think Patrick Mahomes can probably do it. I think Aaron Rodgers can probably do it. I don't know too many other quarterbacks who are going to do that. That's just my evaluation of what I've seen around the NFL. I'm sure as hell Deshaun Watson was going to do that, and he can move out of the pocket well. So to me, I thought this was an A+ performance by Eli Manning. I don't think it can get much better than this. Yeah, he could hit that Latimer throw next time down the left sideline, but that's about it for me. And really, I think the biggest difference in this game for the Giants and Texans, and you can tell me if you don't agree with this, Nick, because might be a bold call. I haven't tweeted about it or anything, but I think the biggest difference in this game was the mental processing of Eli Manning versus the mental processing of Deshaun Watson. I think that was the X factor in this game. That is the reason to me why the Giants won this game. Manning processed this defense fast, early and often on almost all of his pass plays. He got rid of the football in the right spots on time. Not every pass was pinpoint accuracy. Not every pass led the receiver so he could have a ton of yards after the catch. But every ball got there. There were no missed passes except obviously for that Latimer one. And I guess if you want to call that Odell Beckham one, early in the first half, one of their first third down misses. But to me, that was the biggest difference in this one, Nick.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We're going to hit more of the Watson side of things in the later part, but yeah, for sure, it's a stark contrast, and it's something that I think the critical those that are critical of Eli Manning can kind of hold him to this higher standard because they're going to need him to play this way to win with the structure of the line as it currently is, even with the improved play this week. It's just the nature of the beast, and that's great. That's why you have this guy, right? that's kind of the point why you want a veteran quarterback back there like this. And will he be perfect? No, but the play needs to be elevated around this area for the rest of the season for sure.
Exactly. And that actually helps me transition to the next thing I want us to talk about here, Nick. And that's the play calling overall and the play design overall. Obviously, last week we were pretty critical of Pat Shermer for some of the overflow of isolation routes we saw against the Dallas Cowboys. And then just generally, at least for me, I thought he didn't stick with the run as much as he should have early on. Barkley, I think, only touched the ball twice in the first 25 plays against the Dallas Cowboys in the run game. So this week, I thought it was night and day, and that's really a really good sign moving forward, not only for the 2018 season for me, but going forward with Pat Shermer as the head coach of the New York Football Giants, because he did what good coaches do. He adjusted. He didn't do the McAdoo plan of let's put the same thing out there and ask our players to execute better. No, he changed the game plan. He got Eli Manning rolling on the move, throwing on the move, with a lot of bootlegs, some naked bootlegs, plays designed for him to throw on the run. a commitment to the run game early on. And this was a lot of what we saw, in my opinion. It looked a lot like what we saw in that first half of the third preseason game against the Jets, where the Giants' offense was really rolling. Obviously, they didn't convert all their drives into touchdowns, and that was an issue again today. Versus the Texans. But to me, it was a massive step forward for the play calling. I thought his play design was unbelievable throughout. And I think after I throw this to you, I do want to go over a couple plays, and I think we can dive into those. But I just want to get your general opinion first on Pat Shurmur's play calling and play design in this Texans game.
Yeah, definitely a better effort, and an effort where the unit looked more gelled. And what I kind of mean by that more is the quarterback and the play caller looked to be on the same speed. Hence our talk about the play speed, but specifically in the design. The other thing I noted too is some guys were mentioning that Eli in the post game comments had made, I can't remember the exact quote or who said it or who I heard it through on Twitter, that Eli was maybe kind of throwing a veiled comment about how the play calling was a little more simplistic and easier for him to handle, and basically the tweet didn't know what it would be. And one idea I might have is that I definitely saw a smaller, wider, or a lesser range of plays this week. I think you saw a bunch of plays twice in terms of the passing game. So I think overall, I'll bet you the play sheet was maybe about 2/3 to 3/4 of the size that it was for the previous two games.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, they all pretty much said they simplified it a little bit, which is definitely something we like to see. And I want to take this time now, Nick, to dive into that. Maybe we can start doing this moving forward, at least after some of the wins, or all the wins. I want to dive into your favorite plays, your favorite play calls, play design, just overall play, but with a focus on the play call and the design from both the offense and the defensive side of the ball. And then I'll throw in mine.
I love mesh. I think the mesh concept.
And is there a play you saw it executed as well as possible?
Yeah. So he had two that were awesome. The biggest one I thought was the 3rd and 3 in the second quarter, right before the Rhett Ellison touchdown. This is the throw to Odell Beckham. And I've seen a few people break this play down on Twitter and kind of not know what mesh is. It looks like a slot screen almost, or basically like a pick play, which it really is. But yeah, he's got Odell Beckham in the inside slot, and he's running a mesh concept. So Odell's running a shallow cross, and the opposite wide receiver, one of the two opposite wide receivers, is running a shallow cross too. What I really thought was cool about this, just to get into it, the way Manning read this shows me that he totally is understanding what's going on within the offense. Initially, before the play, Beckham had motioned over to the left, and the defensive back had followed him. That tips off man coverage, but it doesn't always guarantee man coverage. And what Manning does, which is really cool, and I broke this out on my piece for Cover One, he checks the opposite side flat first before coming to Odell Beckham running the crossing route. So basically, he's checking where Beckham's going to make sure that those defenders are in zone, and it's not a split field coverage or a mixed coverage or any type of basically like foolery. And so just confirms that his best wide receiver is going to get the play in space, and he goes for 30, gets the first down, and then the next play he's throwing to Ellison for the touchdown, which is a real big part of the game for me.
Love that, Nick. Love that breakdown. That's something I honestly did not notice until you just broke it down. That's something I just learned that Eli Manning checked off, looked on the right, saw the different coverages there, split coverages, and really took advantage of the play. And when you watch that play break down, you see Texan safety kind of jump up to take away the short route of the backfield of Saquon Barkley, because it is 3rd and 3 on this play. Before that, Eli motions Beckham to the other side of the field, and the defender follows with him, showing man coverage on Beckham. It's just really an incredibly designed play, in my opinion, all around, to not only get Beckham the first down in the middle of the field for an easy catch, but also a lot of space to run after the catch there. Did you have a favorite play you wanted to break down from the defensive side of the ball?
Let's stick with the offense for now. I don't think offhand. Not necessarily. you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's all good. I'm going to do both because we're going to do most of the defense later on, but these two plays just really stood out to me. And the first play that I got that really stood out to me on the offensive side of the ball, you actually picked it, Nick, and we didn't go over this before the podcast, so I'm gonna have to go a little bit on the fly here because they did have a lot of good play calls on the offensive side of the ball that I liked. Another one, I mean, that I really liked was actually a play that was called back due by penalty. It was called for a shoulder penalty. He was called for holding down the field. I don't exactly know if it was holding. To me, it's really hard to see from the all-22. Even when I Chromecasted it to a 65-inch television. I really couldn't see the hole, but maybe it is. The ref also seemed to throw this flag really late. It was like a few seconds after the alleged hold. But anyway, the play was a play action pass where the Giants got the entire defense flowing to the right before Eli turned around and immediately threw it back on a screen to Odell Beckham, where he had Solder and another blocker coming out ahead of him. Beckham took the play for 15 yards. Obviously, the whole thing was called. It was going to be 1st and 10 on the Giants' 40. This was a key play in the third quarter, to the third or fourth quarter, just before another punt. Instead, it turned to the 1st and 15. The Giants were sacked on the next play, second and 25, and that play turned into a punt, and it was 1st and 15 from their own 10. So it's really a big game-changing moment. These are the little types of penalties that have kind of killed the Giants' offense for the first 3 games. And once they get these cleaned up, I think you're going to see a lot more success in both halves from the Giants' offense. But that was just a really interesting play for me that I saw on the offensive side of the ball. And similar to that was the play action pass play that Evan Ingram actually got injured on. I love that one where Ingram looks to block down and then kind of just bounces out, and Eli runs a naked boot and just tosses it to him. I mean, when you can get that matchup with Evan Ingram at a 4.41 speed in space, essentially nobody but green grass on the sideline in front of him, that's something you got to take advantage of every time, and that's exactly what Pat Shurmur and Eli Manning did on that play. But on the defensive side of the ball, there was actually a play that I really loved that stood out to me. So it was a 3rd and 9 in the second quarter. Texans had the football, and it was right after they had a 5-yard false start penalty. And actually, this play resulted in a redo of the down for offsetting penalties, which I'll go over in a second, was really ticky-tacky. And the Texans eventually converted this and would drive down after that. They would eventually punt, but they converted this play, and the play was awesome to me because it was 3rd and 9, and what I liked most about this was that Betcher had both Ogletree and Ray Armstrong at the line of scrimmage at the snap. So those were the two linebackers in the play. They were in nickel, the Giants. And then right before the snap, you saw both Armstrong and Ogletree run backwards, run out. Armstrong flooded the flat zone near where DeAndre Hopkins was running his route, completely taking away Watson's first read. You see Watson look there, wants to go to Hopkins to convert that 3rd down, doesn't have it. Ogletree runs the other direction. And by that time, the Giants have 2 high safeties, so there's not much he can do on the left side of the field. And the pass rush gets there. Watson's flushed out of the pocket. Armstrong eventually collapses on the play. It was a dead play. He didn't really need to touch Watson. Watson was either throwing it out of bounds or getting sacked. But, of course, they called it an unnecessary roughness. Literally, Armstrong just tapped Watson on the helmet. But that was considered, you can't touch the helmet no matter what. But that to me was just an awesome play design. I loved it with those 2 linebackers at the line of scrimmage. We kept hearing about that all offseason. Betcher was going to have all these guys at the line of scrimmage. I'm not going to know where the pressure's coming from. And then we kind of saw it, and I just loved the decision to kind of flood the zone where DeAndre Hopkins was. There were a lot of coverages I really liked from Betcher, and we'll get more into that later, where he really tried to take away DeAndre Hopkins, which I think is the total right play against the Texans offense. But we'll get into that later. Before we got into that, I wanted to know what was your thoughts in general on the 3rd down play calling. The Giants went 7 of 13 on 3rd downs. I think this was a really key reason why they were able to win this game.
Yeah, I think overall much better. Let me just look here. I'm looking at what that last play was. Overall much better. Overall, seeing the final drive, I really liked the ability on the 3rd and 2, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this later, but the play to Barkley was just go to empty set. They were very willing to go to empty set, and guys have been breaking those stats out. And so it just puts a little bit more risk on the line, but he had faith in the line and a great completion to Barkley there for that key 3rd and 2. Just an ability to make or a willingness by the head coach to let his players make plays.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't to me what I love most about the play calling on 3rd downs, and I actually broke it down on 24/7. If you guys want to check it out, I've got every play there broken down on 24/7 Sports Giants. But you look at it, they missed 6 3rd downs, right? One was the just overthrow to Cody Latimer along the left sideline. 2 were run plays. One was the 3rd and 11 that me and you went over, Nick, where they ran Gallman. That was really people really criticized Shurmur there for what they deemed to be like basically a what they deem to be a conservative play call. But if you really look at that play, and I know we went over this in DMs earlier this week, Nick, because I wasn't exactly sure about it. Because Hernandez, if you really look at that play, it was third and 11 in the third quarter, and it's a run for 8 yards with Gallman. They just miss it, and there is a huge hole right up the middle for Gallman. I think Barkley is going to get there. He's going to get through that hole. But I also think that there could be a better block by Hernandez. What did you think that was a play that they kind of wish they could have had back?
Yeah, I think it basically was. It was an attempted. If it was a pre or post snap RPO, it was. I'm not sure which. It was hard to tell. They were basically trying to get the defense all on one side of the field and then leak their running back out on the inside zone to the weak side. So I don't know if they wanted. Maybe they want to have it back. I understand why they ran it, because they ran it for almost the exact same play for success with Barkley earlier in the game. I guess the question, like you said, is the first and out. Like, can Gallman make that play? I don't know, for a full 11 at a key point in the game. Or are you running it because you're willing to go for it on a fourth down, which clearly they weren't. So I'm not. I guess you could maybe say they have it back, but I didn't hate it as much as I originally did watching the All-22. And like I said, seeing that they had tried the same look earlier in the game and were successful on an earlier down. So ready for that.
Yeah, and I'm never going to really hate the time when the Giants decide to run the ball with 6 blockers against 5 defenders in the box. I think that, that's a play that can work and catch a defense by surprise, and then you're getting a free first down. And let's be honest, guys, the Giants weren't getting that many first downs. They hadn't gotten too many first downs this season in 3rd and long, and that was a 3rd and 11. So that was one of the misses. 3 were ruined by quick J.J. Watt pressures. I'm just going to chalk that up to him still being one of the best defensive players in football. I don't care what anybody says after watching that game tape. He actually is Pro Football Focus's #1 ranked edge defender overall. So that's 4 misses there. One was a surprise nickel blitz by the Texans, which I think they did a really good job on the play. J.J. Watt beat Wheeler again, and Eli was looking to step up and through the pressure, but the Texans did a delayed blitz from the nickel, and there was nowhere to step, and he took the sack. And then one other play besides the Latimer overthrow was a 3rd and 25, which I'm kind of ruling out. So really, besides that, they had 7 makes, 3 completions to Shepard, 2 to Odell Beckham Jr., 1 to Latimer, and then the one Nick just talked about to Saquon Barkley. So to me, they were extremely efficient, and there's still room to grow there on the 3rd downs. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on maybe with the offense, something about the 12 personnel, or maybe kind of more of what we saw with Eli Manning on the run and the bootleg passing?
No, I think the one part on the bootleg is that there's a big assumption out there that he doesn't throw that well on the run in terms of squaring his shoulders, in terms of being accurate, in terms of getting that drive foot, that plant foot in the right direction. And I think he showed that that's not the case at all. I think it is maybe not the best strategy when you have ends that are more athletic and not crashing as much as J.J. Watt was crashing. What I mean by that is I think he had room to bootleg because the defensive ends were being washed down to the inside part of the play. So is he going to do this every week? I don't think so, because you don't want to require that he beat a defensive end to make the throw. But what I'm saying is when it's there, let the guy do it. Let the guy run. Let the guy move. Move the pocket. It's going to help your pass protection immensely.
Yeah.
And so I really like that part of the game. And I think when they can do it, they absolutely will.
I think you just brought up a great point right there, Nick, too, because just you saying that alone, they might not do this every week, but they did it in this game plan in this specific game plan makes a lot of sense. And it really shows me that Shurmur is onto something, and he knows what he's doing as a head coach and an offensive designer and schemer and play caller, because this is a matchup where it worked, where it was a good decision for the Giants to have Eli on the run. And when he was asked about things he'll do moving forward, he didn't mention he'll always have Eli on the run every game. He said, the 2 things I'm going to guarantee you are we're going to have Odell Beckham Jr. in the slot, which is something we saw a lot more of. There were a couple. There was one early 3rd down conversion that was an easy one, gimme within the slot. He said we're going to have Saquon Barkley lined up as a wide receiver. Those are 2 things we're going to look to do more of going forward. So overall, I was extremely impressed with how the offense played in this game. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we dive into the defense?
No, let's hit the defense. All good.
All right, let's hit the defenses. Right. So I think for me, the most interesting thing we'll talk about first is kind of just a schematic development that I saw, and that hasn't really been touched on too much on Twitter yet. I know you went into it, which was awesome, but the Giants really did not blitz very often in this game. I mean, when you looked at it, they found a way to confuse Deshaun Watson. They had the early 2nd and 4 in the first drive. They had second drive for Texans. They had a 2nd and 4 safety blitz from Michael Thomas that Watson had no clue it was coming, and he threw an incomplete pass. There were few other plays like that, but I mean, overall, I didn't see the Giants blitz that much. I'm sorry. A lot of these plays had 4 pass rushers. That's something you noticed as well, Nick.
Yeah, it's something that was hard to see with the broadcast view. So there was kind of a narrative going around that when the third and fourth quarter came around, that Betcher basically was playing a prevent defense or playing a lot more softer zone in the secondary. And quite frankly, that was not the case. He was really mixing, like Dan's saying, cover 2, cover 3, cover 4 all game. And he had the one zone blitz, as Dan pointed out, on that 2nd and 4. Besides that, I didn't tag anything more than rushing 4, which is, you're talking about the Giants were easily the top 3 blitzing unit, defensive unit in the league. So why did he do that? And it gets back into points that we brought up on our last podcast. And, basically it's 2 things. It's Watson not being able to process what he's seeing on the secondary, or basically being hesitant to fire away. It's his wide receivers didn't do an amazing job of getting separation, even against the zone. The throw that changed it, I think, a little bit for him mentally was on the right before the half. He threw a 4 verts, big deep play to his tight end. I can't remember the guy's name, but Ogletree couldn't carry the vertical route. So in the 4 verts against cover 3, one of them was open. It was Ogletree's, basically his man. It was a cover 3 match that they were playing. And so anyway, that was like the first wow throw for me, where it's like, okay, he's starting to open up again. That changed by the end of the third quarter into the fourth quarter, where you saw him rotating more or hitting more guys against the zone. But it was not because Betcher changed. It was basically because Betcher set it up so he was challenging Watson to be able to hit the throw. And it's almost like you face in baseball, when you face a pitcher that can't locate the strike zone, you really want to let him throw a couple strikes. You'll take 2 strikes because the guy's walked the last 3 batters. And quite frankly, Watson has not played well in the first 2 games, in specifically here, where it's taken a while to get going in the first 2 games. So in this third game, it was very similar to that. And then the other point that really why I thought he did this was because he was able to get pressure against the tackles without having to blitz. Everybody, Barwin, Carter had a great sack with a great hand move, like exactly what we talked about, how Davenport's the right tackle's use of hands was really kind of weak. He was able to get that, and that condensed the pocket, was able to basically throw Watson into tunnel vision a little bit. It was better than it was in the previous games, but they were able to contain him for the vast majority of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, if you really look at some of these defensive breakdowns, a lot of these plays were just broken plays that, coverage was really good on script, and then the receiver, bounced back, went the other way, which was not part of the route, kind of improvised. There were a lot of plays I saw the Giants give up where the receiver improvised. Coupled with Will Fuller, there was one play on 3rd and 3 in the first drive of the third quarter for the Houston Texans on 3rd and 3. Contain was lost, and Watson broke the pocket, and he was able to find this was a little bit before that. He was able to find Lamar Miller on a broken play where Ray Armstrong was the guy lost in space. And really, you can't totally blame it on Armstrong, because Watson did a really good job getting outside of the pocket on that play and throwing on the run. And I thought he did that well all game. And while I don't think Betcher, fell into some kind of prevent defense, there were a few plays that were interesting to me, Nick. I don't know if you remember this one, but there was a 3rd and 8 for the Texans from their own 47. It was their third drive of the third quarter, I believe. There's 4:55 on the clock. And I just wasn't sure why Janoris Jenkins was playing at the depth he was playing on that play. And I probably should have threw this one out to you earlier in the DMs, but it was a play that was confusing to me, because Jenkins was playing well behind the sticks, and it really turned out to be a really easy pitch and catch for Watson to Watson to Hopkins for the first down. And so there were definitely some interesting things I thought about the zone coverages the Giants are playing. I didn't think that, but maybe part of that is that they wanted to, account for the fact that they have PW Webb on the field for 100% of the snaps. And, you don't want to put him in too many one-on-one situations. Do you think that could have played a role?
Yeah, definitely. And I think on that play you mentioned, I actually had that was a question mark for me, just in terms of what the coverage was. I believe it was cover 1. I believe it was man. And I believe he was giving him space for the man that he was locked up. The guys do that to Hopkins a lot. They'll give him huge cushions. But like you said, on 3rd and 8, why the big cushion? I I don't think they expected him. Basically, what happens, the wide receiver ran a drive concept, so he crosses the field,
Right.
and the quarterback has an easy pitch and catch. And so, but I had a question of whether that was man or whether he was matching. He was trying to pattern match what was going on, or if he expected the safety to basically be playing some sort of a 3 robber where he's lower in a robber position, able to basically take the head off the wide receiver as he's coming across. So not sure, but a good question where could have been a busted coverage, or it could have been something where it was just, he wanted that big cushion because he was afraid of him going deep on him.
Yep. I mean, and that's something they'll work on as they move forward, and hopefully as they get some of the players back. And so I wanted to dive into a few other things on the defense, Nick, and I know you want to talk about them too. We can't go too long without talking about the defense and not talking about Kerry Wynn. What a dominant performance by Kerry Wynn, who before this was pretty much preseason and special teams hero. Now he might be emerging as something else. He played a season-high 40 snaps, I believe. He had 5 solo tackles, a tackle for loss, 6 total tackles, a batted pass at the line of scrimmage, and 4 hurries. I thought he was all over the field on the all-22 tape, making incredible plays. There is a play no one's talking about because why would you? He made so many other plays where Watson is driving. He's in the Giants' red zone. He breaks free. He's scrambling for a first down on a 3rd and 8. And Wynn moves back and tackles him for 6 yards, and the Texans have to take a field goal. There's the play where he forces the fumble. There's a play in the red zone early on the Texans' first drive where he has his tackle for a loss and just beats the guy to the edge to stop the run, which would have been a touchdown, I think, otherwise. He was all over the field all game. He was easily the best defensive player on the field for the New York Giants. Who would have thought that was coming? If you can get this guy back, and he's playing a little bit more inside now because the Giants like to put an end to the right of him. If you can get this guy playing at this kind of level with Vernon fully healthy and back alongside him, that to me has a chance to be really, really, really good for the Giants moving forward and a really big factor in helping this defense get to the next level. What did you think of Wynn's performance?
I think, I can't jump in Betcher's head, and I haven't seen the PFF data for where he lined up, but I think the threat of zone read made him put Wynn on the outside more this game, and overall bumped his snaps. And to your point, I think when you see him have 40 snaps and the guy gets in the rhythm of the game, and the guy whose biggest trait is a high motor gets in the rhythm of the game, he can take over. On top of the high motor, and just to add to what you said, his play strength is improving. I can't say it more. He had adequate to solid play strength earlier in the preseason, and it was something I mentioned in a piece for Cover One. It's I projected that I think he could have a big impact, but I said, hey, he'd probably be a nickel sub package 3 technique defensive tackle, which means it's what Dan's saying, that where he'll play inside and kind of be a pass rushing specialist, but he needed to fix these or improve on these parts of the game to be basically a 3-down player. And what you're seeing is inside, outside. He's gaining ground in pass against guys in pass protection or against the run, and it makes a big difference when you get a guy who's only 275 or 280, right? Or maybe a little smaller, and he's getting penetration against larger sized bodies. It reminded me of watching Kareem Martin, excuse me, the Giants defensive end, and he's bigger than Wynn is, and so it's level, and they need it. Without Vernon, they absolutely need that other versatile piece on the line that can do all those things.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think at this point, Nick, and I know you might agree with me on this, moving forward, it's going to be tough to have Kerry Wynn as just a situational, game-specific type of 40-snap kind of guy. I think this guy needs to be a part of the defense moving forward. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you got to get Carter his select snaps, and you got to rotate Barwin. And I would not. I know people love to kind of get on Barwin, but he had a nice spin move in this game. He doesn't flash in the stat column, but on tape he's there, and he's very good against the run. So got to get him in there too. So it's a split for sure.
Completely agree, and you are 100% right about that. There were some underrated plays by Connor Barwin. He loves that spin move, doesn't he?
He does. He loves to go to DC.
That spin back move to rush the passer. That is a staple for Connor Barwin. And you're right. It's going to be tough. I mean, the Giants are doing exactly what they said they're going to do, so we shouldn't be too surprised. Dave Gettleman said, look, I watched that Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl team. I watched how they made that run. They used a heavy defensive line rotation, and that's what we're going to do. And he went out and he got the pieces. Go back and listen to our first Big Blue Panther podcast. I said, what I'm most excited about is this Giants defensive line. They have so many guys to rotate in. And that's exactly what they're doing. I mean, guys like B.J. Hill and Lorenzo Carter, who I want to get to next, they had awesome games on a per-snap basis. but they didn't play that much. Lorenzo Carter played 21 snaps. That's it. BJ Hill somehow only played 14 snaps, which to me is actually something I want to talk to you about. That's very surprising to me. His snap count has gone down actually in each week. But on one of those 14 snaps, you saw the play where BJ Hill completely bull rushed and bowled over the Texans' left tackle, put him on the ground, and then converted the play into a sack by taking down Deshaun Watson. That was an awesome freaking play by BJ Hill. And Carter also had his sack, which I want to talk to you about and have you break down, but also had another play later in the game where he had a similar move, looped around the edge, worked back to Watson, and his early pressure forced Watson to break structure and then get out of the pocket. And that prevented him from seeing the open receiver. And there was one open receiver on the play. If Watson had a few more seconds in the pocket there just to, keep his eyes downfield, it forced him to break his eyes up from keeping them upfield. So those guys were awesome to me on a per snap basis. What did you think of Carter and Hill? And, how do you see them fitting into the defense moving forward after not playing many snaps in this game?
I think it's interesting. I'm just, as you're going through that, I'm thinking like, I don't want to say this. I think Hill's going to beat out Tomlinson for the 3 tech position. I think in week 12, I think it's going to be a different conversation. And that doesn't. I don't want to say that like I'm down on Tomlinson, but I do think Hill is that good and that versatile. And if you play, and as he matures in the league as a 305, 310 pound guy, the more you play him, I think the better he's going to get. So I guess. And I'm kind of going back in my head, like, can he really do that? Because Tomlinson he's really a stalwart, but to me, Tomlinson isn't flashing on tape, and Hill is given the opportunities, and I do think that if you saw an uptick of Hill, it would come at Tomlinson, maybe rotating more, and again, Tomlinson had some good plays, everyone had good plays, but I do think that that's something to watch going forward because Hill has that versatility for sure.
That's very interesting, Nick, and I think that's something we'll keep an eye on. And obviously, I actually agree with you from my, from my viewings of the all 22. I didn't think Tomlinson flashed as much, but I did think he did a good job in the run game. But I want to get your opinion on Lorenzo Carter from, just the 21 snaps he was on the field for what you saw from him.
Yeah, he kind of goes back to, I guess I tweeted this a few weeks ago. He reminds me of like a caffeinated Gumby. He's just very active. He's long and lean, but it's not like he's lean like he's flimsy. It's lean like he can he's very athletic within that frame. And I alluded to it earlier, but he had a real great sack pass rush where it was something that we had talked about where the right tackle Davenport had, basically had hands that were targets where guys can swipe those hands and get the tackle off balance. And that's exactly what Lorenzo Carter did on his sack, on his basically speed rush to the outside. It was just a real nice move. And so seeing an evolving pass rushing skill set, and in terms of higher snaps, I think it gets back to kind of what I said before in terms of, is he as a rookie, do you want him out there on the more so than win in case if the offense throws wrinkles like zone read, does he have that versatility yet? I don't know. And I kind of like keeping him in that 20 to 25 snaps because it will keep him fresh too when he rotates in so that he can feed upon his burst, which this week they're absolutely going to need it against a much better offensive line. So it's almost kind of like save the engine, save the jets for the changeup on those sub packages and on those series where you can get it.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Nick. I think it does benefit a player like him maybe to be in that 20 to 25 snap range, just for a lot of the reasons just outlined, and because of the depth the Giants have. But before we move on to another point here, I just wanted to say this because we did just go over most of them. I can't remember a Giants team that has had these kind of early contributions through the first 3 weeks from the first 4 players they selected in the draft class in forever, at least since I started covering this team, and maybe dating back all the way through since I started tracking this team, which was for me was over 20 years ago at this point. But I just can't remember it. I mean, Will Hernandez, I think he's playing excellent football right now. Personally, I could get your take on that in a second. We've talked a little off pod about that. Barkley, do I even need to go into? I don't think I do. And we just broke down Lorenzo Carter and BJ Hill. That's 4 guys making immediate contributions to this team right away. And that's something that really, really reflects well on Dave Gettleman right now, the Giants general manager, in his first draft of the New York Football Giants. And I just love the philosophy in the draft by him, building through the trenches, getting pass rushers, getting getting defensive linemen and offensive linemen. So I really like what I've seen so far. But one interesting name I want to touch on here, who kind of caught people by surprise with how many snaps he played, was Mario Edwards, the defensive end slash tackle, I guess we can call him now that he kind of played that position a little bit when Damon Harrison went out for the Giants last game, that they claimed from the Raiders, former 2015 second-round pick. You loved him, or you liked him a lot, I should say. I shouldn't say love, Nick, when you kind of broke down what he could offer once the Giants made that signing. I was with you. I liked the move a lot. I thought it was an excellent use of their waiver claim. And he had a sack in this game. He played 24 snaps for the Giants, played a little bit of end and tackle, it looked like to me. So what did you see from Edwards in general? And do you think that he's going to become a part of this rotation, or was that kind of just a benefactor of Harrison missing time with an undisclosed injury?
I think combo of all of the above. I think that he's a player specifically that needs to be in the rotation, and he was bumped inside in Oakland, so he's very familiar playing there. And he actually, I think he had the majority of snaps there in his recent play, if I remember when I looked at his tape. And yeah, the only I guess it didn't flash as much to me. He had some production. His play strength was the one thing that I noted him for, but nothing really jumping off the screen yet. But I think a very solid body to be as a backup and like you said, in that second line rotation to get guys in. I think that what you want to see from him is an evolved way to get penetration in both the run and the pass game. That's the way he's going to flash, and we'll see if that happens. But yeah, I would say it's more in this game injury specific. I didn't see anything schematically that jumped out that where he had to be in the game, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, maybe not so, but he was productive in his 24 snaps with the sack, and just overall to me looked like he was a player out there. And it just to me this is a big factor, and we just talked about it with defensive line rotation and depth, and why this team's going to be a defense that's going to really hold up from it. Now, I don't think they're going to be awesome every game. They've only allowed 62 points, I believe, through 3 weeks, which is excellent, but it's not going to happen every week. Teams are going to get them. The Saints are going to probably put up 30 in this game based on the Giants secondary. Gotta be honest with you. But that leads me to my next point, and I do apologize to anyone who did. I did throw it out there earlier to tell us who you want us to break down on tape, and pretty much you guys responded really quickly and named just about every player on the Giants roster. Fortunately, we don't have time to hit every single one, but we are going to get to a guy that I think is multiple people asked me about, and I want to get Nick's take on, and then I'll give mine, and that's Landon Collins. And I want to know, what's going on with Landon Collins. Because as far as when he's been healthy for the Giants, since he was drafted by the Giants, I haven't seen him. Well, I guess I should say the best way to say this, I haven't seen him flash less on tape than he has during this 2018 season in a new scheme, in a new role in James Bettcher's defense. Am I wrong? What have you seen from Collins? What could be the issues? And is this just like a breakout waiting to happen, or what's the issues you're seeing right now?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I agree that he hasn't flashed. I agree that the first thing that hasn't flashed, I was just talking about like the traits that we're used to seeing on tape and that we're not seeing. The physicality. I have more notes about Riley's physicality and finishing and kind of being angry than I do his. So that's a little weird. So maybe it's a bumped up leadership position. Maybe it's expectations. One thing that hadn't really flashed as much was his overall athletic ability in the first 2 games. Right. I thought he was kind of like a gray man out there. And what I mean by that, he's just kind of blending in with everybody else. This game is a little bit different. I did see, a lot of the Giants media were asking all these questions if Bettcher was going to use a spy for Deshaun Watson, and that's an okay strategy. The problem with using a spy is that you need someone athletic enough to cover a very athletic quarterback in space with everyone else in man. And if everyone else is in man, their backs are to the quarterback. So if you miss the tackle, it's a big, big play. They didn't run a lot of spy plays a lot. One play they did, though, the spy was Landon Collins as the rat/spy role in cover one man. And he makes a really nice play on Deshaun Watson. Only holds him to a 6-yard gain. So just, he flashed there. He had a nice pass breakup that I can definitely remember. But overall, I'm not.
Yep, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah. And I don't really know. I think that it was interesting. I was watching way too much film to prep for this week's game. And I went back to 2016 for the Cardinals when Bettcher was the defensive coordinator when he faced the Saints, and the Saints threw up 48 points on Bettcher's defense then. And I watched the defense, and Matthew wasn't drafted yet, right? And so I think that's the case. I'm 90% sure that's the case. He either wasn't there or he was injured. He may have been injured. Anyway, he wasn't on the field, and the defense was just very bland. And it reminded me a little bit of some of the snaps earlier in the season when the Giants were getting kind of beaten. It was they didn't have that safety hybrid flying around the place providing energy. And I think that's what they're looking for from Collins, but he's just not doing it yet. It's not saying that he's playing poorly. It's just I think he's at that good level, solid to good, and he needs to be kind of good to great.
Yeah, and I'm exactly where you're at, Nick. So I don't want this to come across any differently. I don't think he's been bad at all. I think he's been solid to good, and I'm used to dominant. I mean, he had two awesome snaps that I charted. There was the one in the pass breakup you're talking about is when he was in one-on-one coverage against the tight end in the red zone and really held great coverage and then batted the ball down, and that was a big play in the game. He also had a play later in the game with 4:23 left in the third quarter. The Texans had 1st and 10 on the Giants 33, and this is a really big play in the game because it just stopped up their momentum. The Texans actually, I thought this was a bad play call in general, and we'll get into it. I'm done with Bill O'Brien as a head coach in the NFL and that offensive scheme. But anyway, it was 1st and 10 from the Giants 33, 4:23 left in the third quarter. The Texans tried to run with 6 blockers against 7-man box, so it's not like an incredible play by Landon Collins. He was basically free to the ball carrier, but he shot down and really shot right across through the line of scrimmage and stopped it for either a gain of 1 or no gain on the play. So there were a couple plays there, but again, I'm just used to Landon Collins being a dominant player in pretty much all the games I've seen from him in his career prior to this. So that's something we'll keep an eye on as we move forward. But that's it today for the All-22 breakdown of the game against the Houston Texans. We're going to do a little Saints preview real quick and then get to your questions from the fans. So before we do the Saints preview, I want to give a few injury updates. The Saints, their biggest injury right now was cornerback Patrick Robinson, who they placed on injured reserve earlier this week. The Saints defense has given up 34.7 points per game, and they just lost one of their top cornerbacks. So that's something to keep an eye on. This is a game I will get to in our final predictions, but I definitely think needs to be a shootout for the Giants to win. I think there's going to be 30 points to win this game. But on the Giants side of the ball, Olivier Vernon returned to limited practice on Wednesday. We're recording this on Wednesday. Usually we do Thursday. Limited participant. I'm cautiously optimistic about him playing. I think it'll probably be more of a game time call, and if he does, I think he'll play in that 20 to 25 range snap, 20 to 25 snap range, I should say, if anything. Eli Apple not practicing today. That's a very bad sign. The Giants are really, really, cautious and cryptic about what they're, the injury information they've given out from the start with every single injury so far in the preseason, regular season. So who knows what's actually going on there? But he's not practicing. A lot of veterans didn't practice today. Connor Barwin didn't practice. Jonathan Stewart didn't practice. Damon Harrison didn't practice. I think those are more of just veterans' day off, maintenance days. I'm not worried about any of those three right now. And then finally, Evan Ingram obviously took the low hit, and he has a sprained MCL. He's out, they say, for 2 to 4 weeks. I think this one's going to linger. I don't think they're going to play him before the Giants bye, honestly. I really don't. We'll see. I'm hoping that's not the case because I still believe that Evan Ingram could play a huge role in helping this Giants team win games, even if he's not getting the football, just with what he forces the defense to account for and what he, and some of the routes that he forces coverage on. But that's the injury update as of now. Now we're going to dive into the Saints preview. And I want to start, Nick, by talking about something Pat Shurmur pinpointed in his interview with Mike Francesa on WFAN radio yesterday. And kudos to Mike Francesa and just the overall I guess I would say the overall feel of the New York media and what it's like to be a coach in New York. Because after Shurmur's interview with Francesa following the Cowboys loss, where he basically said like 22 words combined or something, Francesa just ripped him apart, and then callers were calling in, ripping him. And I have a feeling. I'm not going to say this. I have no idea. I'm going to say I have no true idea. But I have a feeling the Giants may have coached him up a little bit and been like, you got to give a little more in the next interview. And he was really, really descriptive and detailed in all of his answers. And Francesa did not let up. He asked him about all the injuries. He asked him about Eli, Wynn. He asked him about Red Ellison. And who Shurmur compared in some ways, not as a player, but in the way they approached the game to Mark Bavaro, which was interesting to say the least. But I got what he was saying. Some people have taken a little out of proportion. But the point is, one thing he talked about was Alvin Kamara in the receiving game as basically the thing he talked about as his biggest worry for this week. So at this point, to me, after looking at the snap counts and watching the tape, BJ Goodson is basically only a starter by title. Ray Armstrong played 14 more snaps than him last game, or he was 14 or 17, I believe. I think it was 14 or 17 last game, and he's been playing more. He's now essentially the starter. Is Ray going to play a big role in taking away Kamara, or is it going to be a scheme, a whole effort by the scheme and the defense? How are they going to stop Alvin Kamara in the passing game?
I think they're going to want to stay in zone or not stay in zone, but have it maybe like a 60-30 bent to zone, just because, like you're saying, Kamara is so tough. And I broke down some of his plays on Twitter today. Yeah, you're talking about a guy he's what, 6'2", like 215, 220, but he defines shiftiness. And on the running side of the house, he's the only guy with basically with Ingram out, and it's Gillespie is the change the pace back. But on the running side of it, it's all mid-zone type stuff that everyone can break the tape down for the last year and know exactly how he's going to want to do it. He's an early cutback runner. He's very elusive. He's very, like I said, shifty. It's very hard to get a square hit on him. Out of the backfield, many people like to criticize their offense as being like dink and dunk, or kind of like just taking the short stuff, the constant checkdowns. What they're not seeing is when you look at the play design, when they're sending a lot of vertical routes, all those vertical routes are basically clear out concepts. So looking to take the defenders in Mander's zone, get them out of the way, and then get Kamara basically the ball in space, like 5 yards down the field in some sort of check down. So they do that a lot with basically with running back choice routes, with running back curl routes. They love this curl route thing to one side that allows Breeze an escape angle to get him the ball. So yeah, it's going to put a lot of pressure on Giants tacklers across the board. I think the best way to do it is basically to be in cover 3 and cover 4 and a little bit of cover 2 and kind of go that way with it. And the Giants play a lot of match coverage, basically meaning they're pattern matching what they're doing. So it's a little bit more evolved. It gets into basically a zone man blend. And so I think they're going to do a lot of that because he's like their number 2 part of their passing game. Wide receiver Michael Thomas is number 1. What is interesting about their passing attack is outside of that, it's not to knock anyone else on the team, they have trouble getting separation outside of those 2 players. So the Giants have 2 bogeys in my mind that they have to take away. And so it's just a little different than having a threat of 4 or 5. When you look at the more complete teams, complete offensive teams in the league, and all this obviously depends if you can find a way to get to Breeze, which is very hard to do. But anyway, getting back to Kamara, I think it's a guy that definitely is the most dangerous. And they're definitely going to run him on post wheel, kind of trying to get, when the Giants run man, they're going to try to time it on post wheel type concepts where you get Kamara going downfield as well. So definitely something to watch.
Yeah. And just on that note, Nick, what else should the Giants be worried about when the Saints are on offense?
I think number 1, you got to say Breeze is 39 or 40, and he looks almost more accurate than he did at the end of last year. Last game was almost his worst game, and it was the running game's worst game in terms of it was a little stale. But the biggest thing to worry about is number 1, it's very difficult to get to Breeze. Their pass protection is much better than it was last year. Number 2, it's Breeze is going to challenge you all over the field. So they're going to stretch the field horizontally, vertically. They rely on their quick game to start off, I think, to basically slow down the pass rush and really nullify it. So they run a wide scope of plays, and it's almost too much, I'm sure, and you need a veteran quarterback like Breeze to do it, but they're going to challenge every part of the Giants offense. So defense, I should say. So it's not like, the fact that Eli Apple is out is bad, but I would say too, they're going to find ways to hit Ogletree. They're going to find ways to hit, they're going to find ways to go after Riley. They're going to find ways to go after Jenkins. The bonuses, there's only 2 real main guys that can gain separation, and they don't have a great speed option deep. Right. Ginn is good, but he's not great. And so I think that basically I'm saying if this team had Brandon Cooks like they did just a little over a year ago, they're really unstoppable. I think that there are ways to stop them, or there is hope to stop them. If you take away those 2 playmakers, and I do think they have to find a way to get pressure. And I think that means blitzing. I think it's probably going to be zone blitzing by rushing 5.
Yeah, I mean, this offense is scoring the 2nd most points in the NFL without Brandon Cooks. Can you imagine Brandon Cooks and Kamara in the same offense with Drew Brees and Sean Payton? I'm happy the Giants don't have to deal with that. But flipping it to the other side of the ball real quick, Pat Shermer actually in the same interview with Mike Francesa pinpointed Cameron Jordan, the Saints' left defensive end, is basically the biggest issue. And he's going to match up against Chad Wheeler. What a start for Chad Wheeler. His first game, he's told the night before the game, you're starting, buddy, and guess what? You're going up against J.J. Watt. The next game, he's told, you're starting, buddy, again, and guess what? You're going up against Cameron Jordan. And he, Shermer was effusive in his praise of Cameron Jordan. Basically said he's one of the best defensive ends in football, and nobody knows about it, and nobody really says that. And I agree with that. I mean, Cam Jordan is extremely underrated, in my personal opinion, and I think that's proven true when you watch him on film. You can tell me if I'm wrong on that later on, and I'm sure I might be, but it's going to be a tough matchup for Wheeler. And Shermer said it best. He said, I take a little bit of blame myself for some of the plays we gave up in pass protection with Wheeler, because I have to find ways to get him in fewer one-on-one situations. Now, is that as easy as Shermer says it is? Is it just like that where you can say, okay, it's simple. I look at the tape. I need to give him more help in the passing game? Or when you do that, does it take away from what you want to do on offense by having to use an extra player or having to do the slide protections to left and putting, an Ellison one-on-one or something like that on an island? Is it really as easy as Shermer's making it? I guess that's what I'd ask.
No, I think it's a comment for the media, and I think it's a good coach being kind of taking responsibility for his player when he knows that it's a weakness, but he knows that he also has to have the player block one-on-one on some occasions. We went over it a little bit, but empty personnel sets with no one in the backfield, you can use a tight end to chip, but the whole goal of empty is to get 5 receivers to flood zone or man, whatever the defense wants to choose, and give the quarterback options. That means a one-on-one on the outside. The Giants were 6 of 6, right, when they ran empty sets. Like, he played well enough there. So they have the confidence against a really good defensive end for a few of those snaps, not all of those snaps. Well, we're against Watt. But again, for Jordan here, I think that it's easy because Jordan doesn't move around the formation really at all. On the opposite side, it's Alex Okafor, who is also a very good athlete that I think Soldier is going to have his hands full with, and Davenport, the young raw rookie. When they bring him in, they kind of sub him in. They rotate on the other side. Jordan, what's interesting is it's an interesting contrast. Watt is unbelievable at his get off and swim move. He's probably the best I've ever seen. Jordan is great at his kind of bull to speed moves or speed to power. Where Wheeler is going to have trouble is basically anchoring. Wheeler has good get off. Wheeler is going to be in position. I don't know if it's going to matter on some of the snaps. So I almost think, now that I'm saying in my head, the running back chip may be the better angle than the tight end chip, because it's not about it's not about slowing down Jordan's momentum at the get off. It's about somehow giving Wheeler the superhuman play strength to stop one of the best defensive ends from basically 2 yards away from the quarterback.
Yeah, and that makes sense, and that's something I think they'll actually adjust and do. But in general, I thought that, and I know we didn't really get a chance to do this. We can't touch on every player, but I really liked what I saw from Wheeler in his first game. Obviously, he had some trouble in one-on-one with Watt, but really the biggest difference between him and Flowers is that he finishes every run play, and he had 2 awesome run blocks. He had a play where early in the game where he crashed down and took down one of the really essentially blocked one of the Texans defenders. Then he obviously had the block down on the Barkley touchdown run. He competes through every whistle, and that's something that you just need on this offensive line. And obviously, I thought Greco and obviously played a great game, and Omeme had his best game. Before we move on to the questions for the fans, did you want to give any quick thoughts on the offensive line? Because I know there are a lot of fans who asked me about that in the mentions, and we didn't really do a full breakdown of that earlier.
No, I think the overall the play was a lot more elevated. Like we said, Omame had some really good blocks from both run and pass. I think just kind of sticking to with the way that the gear for the Saints team, it's a team that isn't bringing as much pressure as blitzing as much as they did last season, but they're going to have to be careful because Demario Davis rushes the passer very well from their 5-1 nickel look, where they've got five defensive guys in a diamond formation on the line of scrimmage, putting a lot of pressure on all five offensive linemen. So it's going to be kind of a game that's going to test them, even though the Saints are giving up a ton of points and all that. And basically their secondary is not having a good time at all in terms of covering guys. I think that it is going to be tough there.
And I'm glad you brought up Demario Davis, because that's somebody who actually flashed to me when I went back and watched some of the Saints games this season. I believe he was a former Jet player, right?
Yeah, and I wasn't that familiar, but maybe a little weak in some coverage spots, but everywhere else, the guys all over the field, and a great addition for their linebacking group.
Great addition, and what a terrible job by the Jets general manager to let a player like that get away on a roster that really flush with salary cap space and not that much talent. But I digress. Before actually, one more thing, Nick. I want one more thing before we jump into the fan questions, because this is something I know you know. I know you have a better grasp on than me, and I want to learn more. What do you think, because you've done more study on the Saints defense on tape, what to you and if you haven't, feel free to tell me, but what to you is the biggest reason why this secondary and this, or in general, the Saints pass defense is struggling so much? Is it the pressure overall, or is it the play of the secondary? Because I'm trying to get a grasp on how this team can go from one of the, a very efficient pass defense last season to one of the, if not the least efficient so far in 2018.
Yeah, it's a great question. As I was kind of almost cramming a little bit for this podcast, trying to figure out how I wanted to frame this. If you look at the games where they got smoked, it's all personnel matchups it's all personnel in the secondary losing matchups to very good talent. And so you're seeing, but again, you're not talking about the weaker parts of their secondary. You're talking about guys like Marshawn Lattimore, who's, he was defensive player of the year last year, or rookie of the year, I forget. He was highly like really good player, and he's getting beat deep. He's getting beat on short routes. He's getting, they're missing tackles. You're seeing, though, to really answer your question, you're seeing last year when they played really well, Latimer and Crawley were able to lock down in man coverage or in boundary lock, which we explained before in previous podcasts. That's where the outside perimeter, outside the numbers defender in the cornerback position, he's basically one-on-one in the on the wide receiver. Last year, that they were able to lock that down with very little basically completions. This year, it's a hole, and when it's a hole, it makes the defensive coordinator kind of tense up because he knows he can't call as many blitzes as he wants to. It literally restricts the playbook, in my opinion. And what you saw last year is when that was really good, defensive coordinator there was able to expand the playbook. Now you're seeing in the first couple of games, I really didn't see much pressure at all that was being brought in, and they were really a problem on the back end. The other side of it, I'm not 100% up on it, is Ken Crawley's play he's either gone down or he's injured because PJ Williams, the backup, is getting more snaps, and he's been beat deep. He is not his speed game, his play speed is not play speed, his functional speed to cover speed deep is not there. And you're going to see the Giants try deep over routes. You're going to see the Giants, try just straight fades too against him. He's going to be a target. So those two pieces, I think, kind of make the rest of the puzzle not really work for their defense. And like I said, the pass rush is good, but it's improving, and it's not good enough yet to really kind of make up that difference, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you're seeing a lot of what basically I've seen, and also what the guys at Pro Football Focus have seen. They have the Saints pass defense ranked, the pass coverage, I should say, ranked 30th in the NFL. And their two biggest culprits are PJ Williams and Ken Crawley, like you said. And Crawley's a guy who's been on my radar way before this because I do a matchup column, or I used to do a matchup column, and I still write about for DFS on Pro Football Focus because I write about fantasy over there. And he's a guy I was targeting a couple years ago every week pretty much in DFS, his individual matchup. He's back to playing bad football. I mean, he's been targeted 18 times through 3 weeks. And like you said, he hasn't even played every snap. He's been losing stats to PJ Williams, and he's allowed 14 receptions for 295 yards. That's unbelievably bad. 14 receptions, 295 yards in 3 games, and he hasn't even played every snap. They tried PJ Williams out, but PJ Williams has allowed 8 receptions on just 9 targets. And again, that was 14 receptions on only 18 targets. Crawley had allowed 77.8% of passes to be caught against him, and PJ Williams 88.9%. And on those 8 passes, 161 yards in coverage. That's unbelievable to me looking at this again. That's almost 500 yards receiving allowed by the both of them. So the Giants need to attack these two when they're on the field. And I think this actually works in their favor, that they're going to be probably forced into playing less 12 personnel with 2 tight ends and more 11 with 3 receivers. So I think that's the best way to attack this Saints defense, and that's with 11 personnel. But on that note, we're gonna switch it up a little bit and get to some questions from the fans. A lot fewer questions this week. That's on me, guys. I expected us to record this Thursday. We wanted to do it a little early to test out how the reception is maybe a bit early in the week, and also because we had the all-22 film to work with. But next week I will give a fair warning there. But we start with BFF426, who asks, a first-half Watson play where he avoided the right D end that came inside, ran left, and completed a first down pass with a runner, mobile quarterback like Watson. Is that just something that happens, or should that be or should the D end been more outside containing? So this, like I talked about earlier, I rewatched this play and really the coverage was awesome on the wide receiver. And then he just broke back towards the left after the route was designed for him to come on a quick in, moving towards the right. So I think that, I mean, you could tell me, is defensive end responsible for contain there, or is that kind of just a really good play by Watson?
I think a few times it was a good play by Watson. I remember a couple plays in the first half where maybe they were stunting. And on the stunt side, it's sometimes difficult if it's a tackle end stunt for the tackle to be able to then play contain. But yeah, they were a little undisciplined in their rush lanes at times. It's what you see with pass rushers. They're trying to be basically more creative and move more and move as they go downhill. I think it's a combination of both. I think that specifically for this play, I'm sure it was someone's rushing lane. If it was the end of the tackle, I'm not sure, but yeah, no, it happens, and it was just, I think the Giants are just kind of lucky that it didn't happen with, as aggressively as it could have. I don't think that, again, not to really harp on the Texans game, I don't think, my sense is they're not really comfortable with him running on that knee or leg, whatever it is. They didn't run zone read, and then he didn't really open up until the second half. It's like they didn't come out with. I thought they were going to move around a lot more. And so anyway, good question there for sure.
And Subwoofer asks, is it a big deal that OBJ hasn't scored a touchdown yet this season? The Giants, with all the weapons they have, haven't broken 30-point barrier. I'll answer real quick and throw it to you then, Nick. I don't think it's a big deal at all. I've talked about why they haven't scored. I think it was a little bit game plan, scheme specific in the second game when they struggled, and then just versus the Jaguars and Texans, they really just beat themselves too many times by getting too many early down penalties or sacks that put them behind the sticks. But when this offense is on schedule, they move the ball really well, and the touchdowns are going to come. They're really close. So to me, I'm saying it's not a big deal just yet.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. I think that the ball distribution to multiple players while keeping OBJ obviously in a high target number. But, I think getting the ball to Latimer, getting the ball to Ingram when he's healthy, I understand he's not healthy now, but that it allows the multiple Pat Shurmur offense run better versus just having one guy basically drive everything.
Exactly. And then we have Subwoofer again. I'm answering two questions here because we didn't get that many, and also you're the man. You always come to us with questions, and we appreciate that. So he asks me, hey, Dan, and he should have said, hey, Dan and Nick, but I'll give him a break. Question about Latimer. He seems to have decent hands to bring the football in. Should he be targeted more as OBJ draws the double coverage?
For sure. We've talked about this a touch, so apologize if I'm saying the same thing. But I believe when the Giants, when they love to run 3-by-1 sets, so three receivers on one side of the field, one receiver on the other, the way Pat Shurmur runs this offense is he's got a zone beater, a zone coverage beater on one side of the field, and he's got a man coverage beater on the other side of the field. I think by far the best Giants receiver to win one-on-one isolation routes is Latimer, for the points you say. His ability to high point, his good hands, his ability to use his body on shorter routes, in slants, on hitches, on comebacks. I don't know why they don't do it more, because what this will do is take the double coverage is an interesting way to think of it. It's how you manipulate the two high safety look. And if the single high safety is going to be anticipating going in both directions. And when you have a basically bona fide threats from both sides of the formation against both man or zone, it makes it very hard to defend. And I made the comparison, I believe, on this podcast that it's kind of what Pittsburgh's offense looked like last year when Martavis Bryant and JJ and Juju Smith-Schuster were playing really well alongside of Brown. It made the whole thing click. And I think it's really important because that one lone wide receiver that the Giants love to have, he's got to be able to win in isolation. And that guy is Latimer is better than Ingram, and he's better than many of the other guys that they've had over there.
Interesting. So I actually would have had a little bit of a different call there because I kind of liked how they spread the ball around. And I know he didn't get many targets last week, but that's something interesting to look forward to. And I know you're a big Latimer guy, Nick. Hey, I can't say he's been bad or anything like that. So we'll see what happens there. Pay the Line asks, in your assessment, why was the middle of the field open basically all day against the Texans? What can the Giants do to fix this against the Saints?
Yeah, I think when you run zone, here's what I would say. This is maybe a little bit of a specific Houston Texan answer. When you have guys like DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller who can beat you vertically, it's very hard in man or zone to not give them a proper cushion. And proper means somewhere in some cases close to 10 yards. That means when they run in-breaking routes, which is what they run a lot of, they don't have a very evolved offensive set, no offense to O'Brien. You're going to give them 12 and 15-yard gains to not give away the big play. I think that's what the Giants were trying to do from again, man or zone. I think they were trying to contain and stay on top of routes versus trying to jump routes. This week, it's actually, I never thought of this way. It's a great question. This may change this week because there's really, again, besides Thomas, there's not many guys that can gain separation. So you may see you may see guys in zones and guys in pattern match that are being a little bit more aggressive and trying to jump those underneath routes. It's actually a good thing to watch. But yeah, I think that it was really just a Texan specific thing there.
Interesting. And that's something we'll keep an eye on this week because the matchup is very different. Obviously, Ted Ginn can be cheap, but obviously Cam Meredith, who's getting some more playing time now, the rookie Traquan Smith, Michael Thomas, those guys aren't as much burners as Hopkins and Fuller. So we'll see what happens there. And the last question we have before we dive into final score predictions is Hefty Lefty asks us, who has the better secondary as it stands after injuries as they are right now? And that we're going to assume no Eli Apple, and we already know that the Saints will be without Patrick Robinson. So is it the Giants or Saints, Nick?
It's really weird. I think many people would obviously based upon last year, would easily say the Saints. I mean, playing right now, I think the Giants are playing very solid. I know there's a lot of kind of hate on Riley's angles, and I think he's playing very well for basically a young player in a tough position. And although he's not perfect, I think he's at a higher level. And to be honest, I think he's at a higher level than the Saints free safety, who is Williams, right? Number 43. I remember his number. Yeah, it's been a long day. No, so I say the Giants. I say the Giants there, despite Latimer being healthy.
Yeah, it's really close to me because I think that, like we talked about for the Saints, P.J. Williams and Ken Crawley are easily the two worst players on the field for either secondary, but they're not always on the field at the same time. And, really you may be able to say the same about B.W. Webb. I mean, I'm not a B.W. Webb guy, and I don't think I will be, but he competed hard. I like the guy. He's a hard competitor. And then you look at the safeties, and like you said, that there's bigger names and better production last year for the Saints, but so far the Giants safeties I think have played safer football. I mean, Pat Shurmur said it best. They asked him about Riley's angles and the overall safety play. He's like, listen, we've kept the big plays from happening. We've prevented – obviously they gave up the Tavon Austin play. But besides from that, they kept big plays from happening down the field. So, yeah, and I love what I've seen from Janoris Jenkins personally. So I'm going to go with the Giants too, and slightly edging the Saints. But it's that time of the show. We're going to get the final score predictions. And I don't want to toot my own horn. It's really hard to do this thing. But if we did run tape back from last week's podcast, you would hear that I predicted the Giants would defeat the Texans 27-21. The final score was 27-22. Hopefully, I don't know what I did on the last podcast. I know one thing I did, and we'll get to that in a second that I did differently from the last podcast. But I'm not like Michael Scott said, I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious. So I probably do the same thing this time. But as far as final score predictions go, I actually like the Giants to build on the momentum from last week. I think this Saints team has major holes in the secondary. For starters, I think they're a much better team at home than on the road. That's been proven over time. I think the Giants match up pretty well against the Saints, to be honest. Just based on their last couple the most recent matchup against the Saints, their home win, and then dating back to the 2015 game where it was a shootout. I think it will be a high-scoring game. I'm going to go with the Giants offense finally breaks out here, and they win a close one, 38-35, a really high-scoring game I'm predicting. We'll see if that holds up. What's your final prediction here, Nick? And will you be the first person, by the way, on this podcast in 8 different individual instances we've had to not predict the Giants win?
So that's what I'm thinking about how – so I'm going to get to my prediction, but I'm going to give 2 different scenarios. I will pick one. I think this is a huge game for Pat Shurmur to see what he thinks about his football team, because I'm wondering if he wants to stay with and he will stay with the run to pass ratio as close to basically 50-50 as he can. I'm just wondering if he even wants to go more so and keep it in a little bit of a slow match. And so where it's like a 21-18 game with the Giants winning. I do think if it goes into a shootout, it becomes a race, like basically a horse race. I think that the Saints are going to win. So I do think that the Giants are going to win 21-18. And people may say, why are you saying take the under? What are you saying? The one thing I don't like about the one chink in the armor with the Saints, I don't love the red zone offense. They sometimes Peyton like overthinks himself. They bring in Taysom Hill. They're running zone read. They're doing all the things that they didn't do to get them there. And I do think that the Giants, I think Giants and Betcher and their red zone D will shine this week. I think they win 21-18.
Okay, interesting. So it's a little bit different of an outcome score wise, but the same overall takeaway. And hopefully the Giants can do it and get back to 2-2. And on that note, we are going to sign off from this podcast. If you noticed, there was something I said at the end of every podcast the first 2 weeks that I did not say last week, and I will not mention it again this week. Like I said, a little stitious. So on that note, I'm going to say thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys next week.